He was failing every test, slipping further behind with each passing week. Teachers shook their heads, classmates whispered, and the future everyone else seemed to have lined up for him felt like it was slipping out of reach. But then, in the quiet hallways of the school, help came from the most unexpected place. Not from a teacher, not from a tutor, but from the black janitor most people overlooked every single day. What he shared wasn't in any textbook. It was a method nearly a century old, and it would change everything. The question is, why was this wisdom hidden for so long? Marcus was just another high school kid trying to survive the daily grind of classes, homework, and endless expectations. On paper, he looked like he was slipping through the cracks. His grades kept falling no matter how many hours he studied. Teachers labeled him as lazy or unfocused, while classmates laughed at his struggles. At home, the pressure only grew heavier. College, scholarships, a future worth fighting for, it all seemed to be slipping further out of reach. But what most people didn't see was the weight Marcus carried. He wasn't just battling equations or essays. He was fighting a system that quietly assumed kids like him wouldn't make it. A quiet prejudice that whispered he wasn't smart enough or serious enough, even though no one said it out loud. Still, Marcus pushed forward, showing up every day, hiding his frustration behind a tired smile. He thought he was alone in his struggle, until one late afternoon when the hallways were nearly empty, he crossed paths with someone everyone else ignored. The school's black janitor, Mr. Harris. Most students passed him by without a second glance, but that day, Marcus noticed something different. Mr. Harris didn't just see a failing student, he saw himself years earlier. And what he was about to share with Marcus would challenge not only how he learned, but how he saw the world around him. Marcus thought failing grades were the worst weight he'd have to carry, but that was only the surface. Behind closed doors, teachers whispered about him, using words like unmotivated and hopeless. When his test papers came back, some weren't even fully marked, just a red X and a dismissive comment like, "Try harder." He noticed how others got patient explanations, second chances, and even encouragement. For him, a shake of the head, as if his struggle was already predetermined. One afternoon, in the middle of class, the tension boiled over. Marcus raised his hand to ask a question, his voice steady but curious. The teacher sighed, rolled her eyes, and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "Marcus, if you paid attention, maybe you wouldn't be failing every test." Laughter rippled through the room. His face burned. He wanted to disappear. But inside, something else stirred. Anger, shame, and a silent question. Why is it always me? He wasn't imagining it. In the cafeteria, when he sat alone, students whispered. When group projects were assigned, no one picked him. And though no one said the word out loud, Marcus could feel the shadow of it. Racism. Subtle, unspoken, but sharp enough to wound. That day, when Mr. Harris, the school janitor, found Marcus sitting in the stairwell with his head in his hands, he didn't just walk past. He sat down beside him, silent at first, just letting the weight of the moment settle. Then, in a quiet voice, he said, "They used to say the same things about me." Marcus looked up, surprised. No teacher had ever admitted they understood. No adult had ever stood in his corner. And then Mr. Harris began to tell a story, not of textbooks or grades, but of survival. He spoke of a method his great-grandfather had used a century ago, back when opportunities for black children were nearly impossible. A way of learning that wasn't about memorizing, but about understanding, connecting, and training the mind like a muscle. Intrigued, Marcus leaned closer. For the first time, someone was offering him hope, not pity, not excuses, but a tool. A secret that had been passed down, tested in times far harder than his. But with that hope came risk. If Marcus tried this method and still failed, it wouldn't just prove his teachers right, it would destroy what little confidence he had left. Still, what choice did he have? Every system around him had already decided his future. The decision hung heavy in his chest. Should he trust the wisdom of a janitor that everyone else ignored? Or should he keep struggling alone, drowning in a system that refused to believe in him? What Marcus didn't know was that this choice would set off a chain of events far bigger than a single test grade. It would expose just how deeply prejudice ran in his school and whether one student, armed with a century-old technique, could fight back against it. The day of the big exam arrived, and the weight in Marcus's chest was heavier than any backpack he'd ever carried. He had spent nights practicing the old learning technique Mr. Harris taught him, breaking knowledge into patterns, building memory through rhythm, almost like music. For the first time, he felt prepared. But the moment he stepped into the classroom, the doubt returned. His teacher smirked as if she already knew the outcome. "Good luck, Marcus," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. He sat down, the whispers from classmates buzzing like gnats around him. Everyone expected him to fail again. The test began. His heart raced as he flipped the paper. The first few questions, his hands trembled. But then the rhythm came back. He could see the connections, remember the patterns. For the first time, the answers flowed. It wasn't easy, but it was working. Hope lit in his chest. Then came the cruel twist. Halfway through, the teacher hovered over his desk, eyeing his progress. Her expression hardened. She whispered sharply, "If I see you cheating, Marcus, you'll be expelled." The accusation cut deeper than any failing grade. Everyone turned to stare. His cheeks burned, but he forced himself to continue, refusing to let them steal this moment. Minutes later, time was called. When the papers were collected, Marcus sat frozen, not sure if he had just written his way into a future or into another humiliation. The teacher stacked the tests, pausing at his. A long silence filled the room before she muttered, "We'll see if this is really your work." In that instant, Marcus realized the fight wasn't just against questions on a page. It was against a system determined to keep him small no matter how hard he tried. And whether he passed or failed, what happened next would expose the truth, once and for all. A week later, the results came back. For the first time, Marcus's name wasn't buried at the bottom of the list. It was near the very top. The room went silent when the scores were announced. Some students looked shocked, others suspicious. And his teacher? She scanned the paper twice, her lips tightening before muttering, "There must be some mistake." But there was no mistake. Marcus had done it. Not with shortcuts, not with cheating, but with persistence, and the wisdom passed down by someone the world rarely acknowledged. Mr. Harris's technique, born generations ago and nearly forgotten, had unlocked a strength Marcus didn't even know he had. Still, the victory came with a bitter truth. Instead of celebrating his achievement, many chose to question it. His success wasn't seen as proof of his effort. It was treated like an exception, a fluke, something that didn't fit the stereotype they had already written for him. That's the weight so many young black students carry, not just the fight to learn, but the fight to be believed, to be seen as capable, to be given the same chance others receive without question. Marcus's story is more than a test score. It's a reminder that intelligence doesn't belong to one race, one class, or one background. Opportunity does, and when opportunity is denied, talent is buried. So ask yourself, how many other failing students are out there right now carrying brilliance the world refuses to see? How many lives could change if we stopped labeling, stopped doubting, and started listening? Because sometimes the greatest lessons don't come from classrooms or textbooks. They come from voices we've ignored for far too long.